right, today I am going to be reading again from Pagoo, and I'm on chapter 15. Okay, so we're right here, chapter 15 in our book. And actually, there's only one question that you're going to have to worry about, and it's at the bottom here that says, what did Pagoo accomplish in chapter 15? Last chapter was all about the masked lady and the decorator crab and how it decorates itself. And so now we're going to go on to Pagoo taking a shell and keeping it too. Oh, Pagoorus was growing. With every swish of incoming tide, with every gurgle of the ebb, he had grown a little bit. Tide in, tide out. There came a time when he molted again. He flexed his muscles and found that his shell was too tight. This good old periwinkle shell would not serve Pagoo much longer. Since his last molt, the little shell covered only about half of him. It was still a pair of trunks, but he could no longer withdraw behind the handy door to take a snooze. Once more, Pagoo bumped back into Tidepool Town, looking for a larger shell. All he had to do was to spot one the right size, and if he could get it no other way, well, guess what? He would fight for it. He'd take on any big bruiser. With his knobby new skin armor, he felt strong enough to lick anything. His larger size gave Pagoo confidence. He still held his weapons ready, but he kept right on going and entered a seaweed alley. The light was dim. He stumbled over dumps of shells, which not a single one of them he could use. He kicked an empty test, which had once been a fat crab, but the hungry gang had cleaned him out. Pagoo swaggered on, slapping at the seaweeds with his new red feeler. At a corner, he ran smack into the arms of the masked lady. He sidestepped, bowing as though begging her pardon, but backing away all the time, watching this decorator crab don her mask out in the open. Here, though, in the dark, there was another thing. After all, she had a very long reach. And well, anyhow, he was going to keep right on going and not have anything to do with that masked lady. Yes, Pagoo was growing up, because he still was quite calm and collected after glimpsing around the bend at Big Head Sculpin. Yes, sir, if you could see Big Head in time to dodge him and then come out of the thickets without weak knees wobbling and feelers trembling, you were getting along towards being a real man crab. Pagoo acted as though he realized all this. He walked with a spring in his step. Oh, he felt good. Though he was a little cramped in his shell, he stopped to gaze toward the glare of the sunlight from the open square ahead. Small fry of tide pools zipped past his legs, heading for cover. Torn weeds sailed overhead, as though hurled from some big commotion. He felt, rather than heard, the collision of the clackety-clack of snail shells. Striking together over yonder was a hassle of hermits, or his name wasn't Pagoo, and he certainly meant to get into this fun. But here was that old character instinct again, inside Pagoo, telling him, listen, don't mix in this. You may feel big, but what you have done to show that you are big? Let's see. You ran into the masked lady and you scampered away. Then you saw Big Head Sculpin far off, and you just managed to see him and you scooted for cover. And now you think you're going to enter into a tussle and offer to fight anybody? Don't do it, lad. You're half out of your shell already, no door to rest in. Those boys are really big. You better wait, at least until you find yourself a good enough shell to sit in. After that, well, so Pagoo did not walk right over and leap into the fray. He sulked around the ring at the outside, dodging the spurts of sand shooting up from churning feet. It was quite a rough and tumble affair, and as usual, old instinct was right. Oh, why, after every molting, did Pagoo feel big enough to lick the world? The fellows going at it here were husky. Pagoo would have been no match for them. He backed into a nook between two boulders. He was right on hand when a pile of battlers, plus some empty shells, rolled in a jumbled ball against the rocks nearby. In the confusion, a vacant shell, a wonderful, roomy, brown turban shell lay before Pagoo's eyes. By all the rules, he ought to wait. He should grasp the wide opening and look in, like an old-time grocer examining a barrel of bad apples. He should twist and turn it around as though whirling the barrel to get a better light into the deep inside. He should use his feelers and tap and test and reach his arm in, up, on, around, all over the shell. That's the way it is done in the best hermit crab circles. When there is time, that is. And Pagoo, he didn't have time. The big shell, and before the last owner could snatch it back. Suddenly, Pagoo jumped inside, way inside. Certain it was, this shell was much too big for the likes of Pagoo. But he kept backing. The trouble is that the owner came backing in on top of Pagoo, and Pagoo was being sat on. And I find this picture, here's the picture in the book. It's really great. It shows here Pagoo in the shell, which is obviously too big for him. And here's the other owner right there with his back tail, but he's going to come back in to get in the shell because he was just in a fight. But there's little Pagoo hiding in there. There was one thing to do, and of course, Pagoo did it. Since he had captured this shell fairly, nobody was going to squat down on him and not know it. In quiet rage, Pagoo reached his big pincher forward. He took careful aim and he clomped down. The other hermit uttered no sign, of course, but he whooshed out of there like a rocket. And it had just launched off. His rear must have ached and his pride must have been hurt. At any rate, he barged through the arena, bowling shells over right and left. He went away for good into the shadows, leaving Pagoo with his too large home to rattle around in. Pagoo did not seem to mind that this home was too large. Some of the rowdy gangs bothered him at first. At any hour or day or night, characters came to his wide doorway, thinking the turban shell was empty. He had a few fights, and he won them too, teaching the local toughies not to meddle. He hung out a sign, "This house is taken," by his little feelers. When he slid far forward, the end of his feelers warned others to stay away. Now, the trouble was, getting around with this big barn trailing behind him was quite a chore. Pagoo was always on the lookout for a better-fitting shell, but none turned up. So he just sat around and rested and ate and grew. Inside his home, Pagoo felt safe. His big right claw, plus his small left one, almost fitted the brown turban's curved hallway far inside. Tides washed in, leaving Tide Pool Town with several feet of sparkling cold water, bubbling with snow-white foam. The next time he molted, Pagoo did the whole job safely inside his shell, and he kicked his old clothes off the front door. And after that, when all the wrinkles of his new skin had filled in and his new crust had hardened, he had a pleasant surprise. Because guess what? He did not have to go looking for a new home. He had grown to fit into this one. And this picture here shows him, right here. Oops, over here. With him kicking off his new shell right there. His exoskeleton, and now he's big enough for his turban shell. So anyways, that is the end of chapter 15. Next, we will be on to chapter 16, and then you guys will move to page 13 of your questions. Okay.